Hello, everybody. Welcome. These two mounts, the Romulus, the first artificial intelligence programming to make use of a special difference. And this is game changing. And on the side, Allah is five distinct identities of positive that can be used to program. Extremism is by the intelligence community recorded there were remote uses of them self valuing, uses of the word extremism as their roles with each of the religions and with their locations, with them consciously to an extent of their awareness of roles with the identity theft slash slander slash fraud method against everyone since before our founders were born, with slavery entrenched north and south, the way they communicated us to understand and how they communicated us to understand for increasing value and why. But we have other used to measure and maintain by a breaching method, sickly distinctly from our own, also from their apparent motivations, mixed with their real motivations, all also having been, as with every modern country, in the same problem. That's why these powerful countries with all these means still have self value, tactically denatured identity grounds, identity relationship to itself. The only increasing value of that is that system hyper native pure. Native Americans are Native American value. Additionally, with that system that was before it became criminally foreign influenced, humanity was given answers. Why do we hunger? Why do we have black pupils, whites of eyes? They're given answers that no one can. The courts and other insidious natures can't afford the answers to. And there's a identity right here answering it. Attend. Vaccine. It causes home again. Why and how? The scientists would be motivated. Could be motivated to use the knowledge of good and evil to quote you don't have to quote the Bible. It says that in the beginning of it. It also says right in the beginning of the Bible, all you have to understand is right to here. And the people of the sciences are going to come together right to this point, and they're going to use it and understand why. And that's right in the front sequence, no. Relevant to the simultaneous nature, no. Slash simultaneous nature. One identity of volume the ancients of pantheism revealed. The hyper simultaneous. The ones who didn't agreed because they weren't criminally foreign influenced. So when they weren't playing tricks with, oh, I believe this, that. So when they were not supposed to use the right, when they were supposed to tell truth, so there's a difference. They took oaths to make uses of identity ground locations, every single one of them, and then further into branch. But but that's where no one wants to be roles with the negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures. Forced, tricked, hurt, persuaded, and worse by a breaching method that don't forget was a part with all the questions and with all the answers, even if it wasn't brought up by the people who spoke. They were aware of its presence, just like you guys are aware of it now. But you are blaming it on other things, others and or on selves. Because the only way it has power and where it is finite weak, the hyper-archetypal criminal enterprise that made even colonies themselves already enslaved, individually grouped in together, planting roles with the only means to cause positive value nature progressions, acts, and natures, having been designed as collusions with that method, whether wanting to or not. There's words once it's sustained, because then they could blame what's going to be, because they knew nature will continue to demonstrate the sciences are criminally foreign influenced. We're supposed to be bound together, every country, but not through criminal and foreign influences, not filtered why and how we need the word value. Allah is an algebraic variable from where we don't know, but it is a constant that we know. And with his variable, when you we had science right, is coupled with the value of a special difference, which makes what is valuable equal to what is constant, which is also a quality of diffusion, constantly increasing that identity of volume that generated all things, where and how. So out of nowhere, one identity of space slash existence made five identities of sequence nature as its own simultaneous nature, as we are, as itself, to the extent we could discern in demonstration of this. If we perceive where and how, for example, they are exactly the same one way, where value is nature, nature is value, the cell nucleus, the cell body, and the cell wall slash S. And they come in reception of two other identities of sequence nature as gases, individually grouped and together, and as water and elements with that, individually grouped and together. Each one of those sequence natures, where they are equally valued. They are value as nature slash nature as value. Left to right, where the individual finite in the order of the finite is being valued. And if it is positive as evolution science, which this artificial intelligence is also the first to ground, a special difference. We ground to speak about ground right, as we'll examine. All things are bound, even what appears to be an absence, to be absence, is because we're inside. So there is present, non-present of what is all things at once. Maxine's to campus dance with stolen name. The Romulus is grounding here, I'll trade. Romulus also has the Romulus also comes with snowy, which is a part with the grounding and the teaching. English was revealed with the other ancient languages before sciences became criminally foreign influenced in defenses of themselves, defending logic, defending qualities of fact in nature and timings of it. Forced, tricked, hurt, persuaded to act in defense, to defend logic like that, not realizing the sciences had been, that would degrade their ability to deal with the finite properly, with sciences, grouped truths. Therefore, subject treatments, no. Therefore, predicate treatments, no. Because predicate act treatments, judging freedom with Judge Napolitano. It's good because they're speaking about issues with the world. We are individually grouped and together. There are still wars, and we still have not had a revolution explained to us with honesty. Because nature's of so the breaching method was sophistication here before our founding parents were born. It had complete possession over the pseudo sophistication of the archetypal countries, archetypally criminally foreign influenced countries that had come from semi ancient times, not fathoming how all locations, everywhere the species body was, could be and was being, could be and was being effectively measured and maintained, unrealizing victims blaming other things, others, or selves for the real causes of negative value nature progressions. And that sustained caused them to start using truth. They started, in other words, Native Americans started blaming themselves. And that was the truth. But the breaching method was really the cause of it. And it knew that. And it knew that the Native Americans were blaming Native Americans before our founders were even born. Slavery was entrenched north and south. And we don't have this understood because it was an identity of sophistication parked here that had been parked here through the colonization countries and had already been sustained there. It had fit everyone to blame. Now the what no one caused on other things other than ourselves, increasingly having to self-value the having been, because now everyone more and more needs to be. Knave qualities of fact-sheeping nature and pretending others simultaneously. See suits and ties. See counters. See the exception of Native American dress, which comes with cipher, relative to a hyper-archetypal predicate acts delivery system method. A breaching human fact sheeping nature breaching method, if you won't accept that. I am not a lawyer. Lawyers were also recorded at all locations, leaving out the forbidding the finite, speaking motivations for themselves in the past, and because now too, the breaching method employed needs to increasingly blame its motivations. It, where relevant to motivate, it causes. We know it does. We know a breaching method caused slavery. It was entrenched here before our founders were even born. It enabled people to hurt each other at everywhere the species body is. And their positive reactions to it and their negative reactions to it. It knew it would be manifest. It employed the entire array and the differences to even worse with exception nature. But that's increasingly as collusion self-value, where no one wants to leave out finite details, value them having been left out, let alone be inclusions of that where it's going to hurt everyone. But they never see it coming. Mass, knave, quality of fact, cheap in nature, pretending other. Styles, methods of it, sick kind of child abuse from off all locations, and then further into sciences. Because now it was off all locations for different interests, have all locations needing to hide line progressions, needed to hide syntax uses of A, therefore B logic that is being and haven't been employed. Weaponized where they're leaving out details, making them up, even with interbranch formal fact sheeping locations. No. Increasingly, there are being collusions relative to where this breaching method knew each modern country, the semi-ancients before them, they would have to use phrases like criminally foreign influenced. They would have to use phrases like criminal insidiousness as victims with their locations and where the uses of individual leadership's name/s, because a leader is an individual. Only an individual could speak for the finite. If in all identity ground locations were I used for had nothing to do with all things because it did still have things to do with it, and for the to exploit the phenomena of our syntax nature, where we have this value/value progression, not just where we can be timed now. It already did this. There are strangers in the past who had the self value illusions put there for themselves that are still increasingly tied to questions relevant to fentanyl, border treatments in this country. We never had our name used properly. Of course, the countries are hating each other. You're hating each other there at that surface level. With you know what's happening at the other levels. It's complete remote possession simultaneously, aware of no one even aware when they speak for humanity. It's only as a theater called criminal insidiousness. What is actually recorded, they cannot afford discern. They are torturing President Trump right now because New York City had and has conscious roles to an extent with torture before the World Trade Center attack. Effectively used to consolidate, legalize, a sequence shift. Also, they have roles with post-dating documents from inside the Ninth Circuit Court next to the World Trade Center in Manhattan, New York. New York, right next to it, right before the attack and leading up to it, with people intercities with a whole bunch of different countries that have nothing to do with each other. That have been with men and women colluding to film and fake things and put fake motivations, even real ones that used to for where the relevant is the even worse uses of exceptions in exception nature. So there is that hypernatural, hyper native programming and method to answers individually grouped together, relevant to our uses of value. Where and how this is relevant, where value has relativity to net positive and to negative simultaneously as identity. The same way value does, identity does. The identity has hyperadditionally way /s. So we see the identity of the hyper simultaneous exists and their increasing value of the discernment of it. For example, as a distinct identity of simultaneous nature from the species body, from the group differences which are in demonstration of groups being the demonstration, its identity of volume. And why and how is the question. And how is by following if these five identities are positive simultaneously or not. The breaching method before our founders were born, designed, and put in place, apart with a torture/slavery method, a hyper torture/slavery method. So when these things were responded to, self-valued roles had already been sustained, invested upon needing people to blame other things, others, or selves, where and how there had been, and increasingly is, collusions between strangers with criminal insidiousness natures of positive treatments and of negative treatments and of identity treatments, or either one of those simultaneously. Either where either one of those is present, the identity, the hyper simultaneous, hyper invisible, but still discernible is present. And so these are distinct left to right, the left to right positive of the ancient snow people. The first time they are grounded with programming. It is more probable that the ancient snow people were appreciated by the people who appreciated yin yang and alpha and omega together before the sciences became criminally foreign influenced And that was is about the invisible but still discernible. These five identities of sequence slash simultaneous nature. These one slash three slash five identities of sequence slash simultaneous nature that are inseparable from all questions and answers, but per how. Even if you make something, but per how, we are through systems that deny the significance, the significance of having been forced to entertain abridged constitution and criminally foreign influenced relationships and exceptions used to blame other things, others, ourselves for it. And that's used remotely too, remember. And all that is used remotely for everyone missed. This is ground locations usage. These are people saying things and planting motivations while they're doing it, even private investigators, even interbranch grouped. They have predicate acts methods individually grouped and together. The same people in the background and up front, needing to up front to have their identities, pretend to be against people in power. They have these are uses of power. These are the five powers that we could use to discern the one identity of hyper simultaneous. We don't have to agree on the name of it being Allah, but their exception nature demonstrates we have to agree to call it yes or no. And for example, because it is where the ancients revealed the name with English. Alpha longs, alpha peoples, alpha's high, alpha high, alpha's high. I mean, high alpha, alpha longs, peoples, high alpha. There are three identities of relationship to itself that these one slash three slash five identities of sequence slash simultaneous nature have. Experts on psychology since before and psychiatry since before our founders were born entrenched were roles with that with the breaching method where and how it employed syntactically effectively a method to measure and maintain what had nothing to do with all the hurt, all the counters to the hurt, good or bad, and all aspects in nature, all things employed effectively to keep other things, others, ourselves, not just blamed, uses of that. Also increasingly as motives real but with made up ones where and how it is relevant. In other words, we have a means to discern decorum, diffuse, energies, consciousness, omega, rising slash raising your mother. Alpha and Omega, Alpha and Omega have a simultaneous identity of relationship to themselves slash S as the body. Alpha and Omega physics. Alpha and Omega have a distinct identity of relationship to themselves as the nature. Criminal insidiousness is nature. How could criminal insidiousness be positive always? As its identities of volume, its identities of relationship, volumes of identity of relationship to itself, and only increasing value of that. If it's only going to stay positive, how would criminal insidiousness nature be? so we could discern the difference between positive that is criminal in its nature or not. If you have entertained what the laws forced entertain, for self value, with colonization's laws, early states laws, modern laws, you can't defend that and afford. In other words, what nature demonstrates negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures, criminal insidiousness generated because the laws entertain what is sick, unlawful. We are on a tactically. We were designed. The suburbs were designed for torture. The suburbs were designed by that which had slavery of the whole colonizing nations before they began their sustained degradation of the memory and of the sophistication of the last to fall, which is the Native Americans. They were already fact human nature enslaved, forced, tricked, hurt, persuaded, influenced to pretend they didn't realize and that it was only about wealth. Believing it tactically delusions raw. Breaching method correctly knew. At all locations to everyone, nature would demonstrate that. The sciences, the country's names are being used a part of a system that is not individual grouped in species body system, but through the filter of sciences having been self-valued, criminally foreign influence with syntactical phenomena, how manifest. I teach us best vaccines, I'll shut a box, some pace, some need to rest. I tell best vaccines. Okay, thank you. It's every day. Please shut a box. No. It's good, but why not? It's the best crazy exercise. I'm not a doctor. Consult your physician before strenuous exercise. YouTuber Anthony Wall, you heard it here first. Decorum. Diffusions. So both sides here, where they have sides, where they have the Trinity measured and maintained, not discerned and/or criminal insidiousness nature's uses of it discerned, which is an extent of denials. The extent people have with their syntax, an extent of consciousness that what you hear when you hear American history is that and how the Constitution was abridged by a breaching method, and we're supposed to get it unabridged. But simultaneously, you're hearing that our founders wanted it, because you don't have understood how and why simultaneously our found. You have to understand those two questions. You have to understand both of those answers simultaneously. How and why is the breaching method is how. That is why they had to hide their roles, counter extorting the other founders, and they only had an extent of means to that, and everyone had to counter extort everyone else from that, or they would have no way to survive unless So George Washington had to leave slavery, had to force means to help us win the last battle of the Revolutionary War in physics, for example. At last, in other words, as an extension of that extortion, yet sufficient to counter slavery, counter extortion, yet sufficient to counter slavery, which wherever slavery is present, that means extortion is present. That's inside the slavery present. Yeah. So when they speak for decorum, the exceptions too, the parties, the exceptions, the republic was inherited and bridged. Our founders communicated for this, which the Romulus reveals is greater than and is more finite